Frank Zappa, and also the three remaining members of The Doors, Ray Manzarek, Robby Krieger, and John Densmore, all on Rockline tonight. Hopefully, with any luck, we will be back to a London report. They did that the first week and had some trouble with the phone lines, but at this point, we will see. They could be doing a live from London report, but we will be keeping you up to date on it. You're with Mark Goodman at WPLJ in New York City. I should remind you, while I have the chance, that aside from Rockline happening, we are going to be celebrating tomorrow. Peter Townsend will be 36 years old. And of course, we wish Peter a happy. All day long, we're going to be taking your suggestions for your favorite Peter Townsend songs. By Townsend, of course, and by The Who. And then, tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a 10 Best at 10 playback. Okay, so all day long, we'll take your suggestions for great songs by Townsend and The Who. And then beginning at 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, a 10 Best at 10 feature. And that only here at WPLJ in New York City. We now take you live to Hollywood, California for Rockline at PLJ.
Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game. Hello, who do you love now? Who do you love, child? I said, who baby, who do you love? When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange.
Live from Hollywood, London, and the music capitals of the world, it's Rockline, the show that gives you the chance to speak directly with the top stars in the music industry. Just dial our toll-free number, and you'll be heard over the entire global satellite network. And now, from our studios in Hollywood, it's the host of Rockline, B. Mitchell Reed.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Los Angeles, California, the Doors!
Yeah, that's the kind of intro I love. Yeah, hi there, this is B. Mitchell Reed, the Beamer, and we got a very exciting night for all of us here. We got The Doors, the first American group to sell 8 consecutive gold records, and now 10 years after making their last record, they're selling as many records as they ever did when they were together as a group. A book's been written about them, which turned into an incredible bestseller. You Can't Get Out of Here Alive came out last year, and they got a TV special coming up this summer, and I was about to say, it is my extreme pleasure to introduce the 3 living legends, but we're going to introduce the 2 living legends because John Densmore is out ill today. John, I know you're listening, and we want you to get well, so it's my pleasure. On my left, the great Ray Manzarek. On my right, the great Robby Krieger. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks. It's so good to be around with you. I can't believe how many years we've known each other. It goes back around 66, 67. There.
Yeah, it goes way back, doesn't it?
When you fellas were one of the best known underground secrets, when Paul Rothchild was subsidizing you and you were rehearsing a hell of a lot.
That's about it.
Before that first Elektra LP. God, it's amazing that it's been those years. I wanted to bring up something which is interesting to me, and I think interesting to the people as well. By way of kicking it off, The Doors legend. I think I want to ask you a question later on, Ray, about the recent Francis Ford Coppola affair, but the apocalypse now. Mm-hmm. But The Doors legend, how can it be these many years that you can keep this thing alive? Can you answer that?
Yeah. Well, Jim Morrison will always be alive.
Yes.
Is what it amounts to. Jim Morrison might be not on the planet at the moment, but he is alive. Jim will always be alive because the man was a genius. The man was a poet, an artist, and probably the craziest, wildest human being that I've ever met.
Yeah.
And a combination of those things make for an American legend, an American immortal. He's James Dean, he's Charlie Parker. He's all of the poets, he's Blake, he's Rimbaud, he's T.S. Eliot, he's E.E. Cummings, he's Jack Kerouac, man. We came out of all of that stuff, We were rock and roll beatniks is what we were in the beginning,
You were mad. You were insane people, weren't you?
Mad to live, mad to rock.
I guess before I ask the second part of the question, it has to do with that legend about Jim and being alive and being all those wonderful things you said. I'd like to give everybody the toll-free numbers to call for us. Across the United States, toll-free. It's 1-800-421-3222. That's the Rockline number, toll-free. In California and outside the country, which means Canada, of course, you dial direct or collect 1-213-520-5000. One thing I did not mention when I was introducing you, the fact is that we have millions of satellite listeners that are already tuned in, and we'd like to welcome a brand new station, WQFM in Milwaukee. So those are the numbers to call.
Milwaukee, all right.
Milwaukee, all right. You ever play Milwaukee?
Yeah, been to Milwaukee and love the city, man.
You have been? When did the group play Milwaukee?
We did a pop festival there.
Yeah, right. Right, a long time ago, yeah.
Right on the water.
Right on the water.
How many years ago was that?
Yeah. Well, who knows? Who can count after 4 or 5?
The business about Coppola, I want to get back in just a little while, but I'd like to play a cut to remind everybody what the Doors are like, were like, and are still like. How about a thing called Touch Me right now? As beautiful today as it was when it was first recorded and first released. We'll be back with Ray and Bobby on the Rockline. Later on, Frank Zappa write up these messages. You're back on Rockline with B. Mitchell Reed, the Beamer, and my guests, Ray Manzarek, Robby Krieger, The Doors. And before we broke away, I was going to ask Ray to comment upon the fact that you did something for Coppola, having to do, of course, you were the, I believe, for the Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now, right.
You were the musical consultant.
Right.
But there was something that went down that went against the grain, your grain, insofar as the legend of Jim Morrison. Do you remember what it was?
Something that went against the legend.
Yeah, in other words, it didn't really work out too well, did it?
Well, what it was is that we were involved in doing an American Prayer, Jim's poetry album.
That's it.
And the two things came up at the same time, naturally. That's how it always works in life. You invariably find yourself doing 2 or 3 things at the same time, and you can't do them all. And that's what happened. I was going to do the music for Francis's movie, but we were right in the middle of doing an American Prayer, and which is more important? Obviously Jim's poetry album. And by the way, if you haven't heard an American Prayer, it's Jim Morrison's poetry album, man, and it's a heavy album.
Let's ask David of Syracuse. You're on the Rockline with B. Mitchell Reed and Ray Manzarek and Robby Krieger. David, how are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
Okay, man.
I'd like to ask you how the Doors got formed in the 1960s, how they got together, and how did they go about it?
Well, first of all, David, it was magic is how it all got together in the first place. I was sitting on the beach in Santa Monica in Venice, California, and Jim and I had both graduated from UCLA. I knew him at UCLA and the film school, and he was going to New York City to pursue a film career, and I was going to stay in L.A. And about 2 months after graduation, Jim came walking down the beach. I said, "Hey, man, I thought you were going to New York." And he said, "No, I decided to stay here." I said, "Well, all right, man, great. What have you been up to?" And he said, "I've been writing songs." I said, "Songs, yeah? Well, why don't you, just sing me a song or, sing me what you've been doing." And he sat down on the beach, and we were sitting there, man, in the middle of July in Venice, California, right on the beach, looking at the sun, looking at the water, and the Orient was the next thing. There was nothing there, man, except Japan and China, and Hawaii was out there. And he sang Moonlight Drive. Let's swim to the moon, let's climb through the tide, penetrate the evening that the city sleeps to hide. And I said, "Wow, man, those are the best lyrics I've ever heard for a rock and roll song. That's incredible. Do you got any more like that?" And he had, maybe a half dozen more songs. And at that point I said, "That's it, man. Best, you're incredible. Absolutely incredible. This is going to be really good, man. I can hear all the things that I can play on keyboards behind it. Let's get a guitar player and a drummer and maybe a bass player, and let's put a rock and roll band together." And he said, "Yeah, that's what I want to do, man." So a couple of weeks later, I was involved with the Maharishi's meditation, and who should be in the meditation class but Robby Krieger. and John Densmore. Somebody pointed out John and said, that guy's a drummer. I went up and talked to John and said, hey, we're getting a band together, man. We call them at the Doors, and I play keyboards, and this friend of mine's a great lyricist and singer, and we need a drummer and, guitar player. And John pointed to Robby and said, hey, that guy over there is a guitar player. And so I said, well, let's get together, man. And Robby, what happened next?
What happened next, Robby?
$1 million.
$1 million. You really swung pretty good from about 66, 67 through about, 69, right?
Yeah, 70.
Jim died in 71, but after the Miami affair, it seemed sort of held fire for a while, right?
Yeah, it was pretty tough going after that, but then after that we did the LA Woman album, which turned out really good, and that was an upswing for the Doors, and then of course Jim died.
Right. Let's have Julie of Michigan. Julie, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. I want to know how you and the other members of the group got along with Jim, and how his personality was.
Are we talking to Ray or Robby?
Doesn't matter, man. Go ahead. Go ahead, Robby.
Well, I'd say we all got along real good with Jim, especially when he was his poet self and, writing songs. His poetic self. And, when we were writing songs and doing our work and stuff. And then he could be the worst, when he was drunk or something, or in one of his off moods, he could be the worst guy in the world. That you wouldn't even want to talk to him, But it was just a complete swing. Like either he'd be great or the worst.
The guy had a lot of personalities inside of him. He was a shaman, A shaman is a guy who was a sort of a mystical, back in the tribal days. He was the mystical guy who would go on trips and sort of just trip out and take the tribe on a psychic voyage, a spiritual journey. And that's what Jim was, You'd never know from one day to the next if you were talking to Jim Morrison or the dead Indian that was inside of him. And when the dead Indian was talking, you had to talk to him on a mystical plane, if you know what I mean by the mystic.
Okay, let's take another call. Marcella of Orange County, listening to KLOS.
Hi.
Hi.
Hiya.
How you guys doing?
Just fine, babe.
Good.
Good. The reason I'm calling is that I saw American Pop not too long ago, and I saw it mainly because it said the music of Jim Morrison. But then I thought about it, and People Are Strange is not a Jim Morrison song, it's the Doors. And I was wondering how either of you, or both of you, or whatever, feel about being referred to as the music of Jim Morrison rather than the music of the Doors. Does it bother you?
Yeah. Well, Jim was the lead singer, and the guy who sings the songs is invariably called the band, like Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones and Jim Morrison and the Doors. And so Jim was the guy who was up front, he was the guy who got all the publicity, and he was also the guy who got all the problems, The narcs were after Jim Morrison. The Vice Squad was after Jim Morrison. You know what happened? You've heard about Miami, and we'd go on stage to play, and they were out there to bust Jim. They weren't out there to bust the keyboard player or the guitar player or the drummer. They were going to get the lead singer, and he was the guy who was standing up there. So get Morrison is what it was all about.
Okay, Marcella, thank you from Orange County, and we'll be taking more calls. We want to remind everybody we got Frank Zappa standing in the wings. Frank's going to be here a little later on.
All right,
and,
Frank.
The numbers to call for the Rockline to speak to Robby and Ray and me. Toll-free 1-800-421-3222 across the United States. California, outside the country, dial direct or collect 1-213-520-5000. The Beamer and my guests will be back with Rockline in a bit.
Into this house we're born.
Okay, I've got Wanda of Columbus, Ohio, listening to WLVQ on the line right now. Is that right, Wanda?
Yeah, that's right.
Hi, Wanda. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Speak away. Let's have some off-the-wall questions. Come on. Get with it.
Well, this isn't too off the wall, but it's something that has been bugging me for a long time. I was wondering, how come after Jim died, you didn't get together and make some more music as the Doors?
Well, I hate to say this, but for your information, FYI, as they say, there were a couple of Doors albums. One was called Full Circle, and the other was called Other Voices. Ray, John, and Robby stayed together for 2 more albums, and they made a couple of albums without Jim Morrison. And what else can I tell you except check your discount closeout record bins.
Discography, yes, you might be able to find them. Okay, thank you,
They're
Michael.
classics by now.
You got an off-the-wall question, Lynn of Sun Valley?
Yeah, I'd like to ask 2 questions to both of you. I'd like to know if you think Jim Morrison's still on Earth, and also if you mind another band playing the Doors music, Strange Days, they're called.
Well, I haven't heard Strange Days myself, but I don't mind having other bands play Doors. You know, I look at it as a compliment, really, to have other bands play your music.
It also helps the publishing, right?
I don't know if we don't really get paid on that, but it doesn't offend me. And as far as I know, Jim still is on the planet, but unfortunately he's in a box in Paris.
You got that, Lynn? Lynn, before you go, what station are you listening to out there?
KLOS.
Are you listening to Sun Valley?
Yeah.
Sun Valley? That's interesting.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, about that, there's a beautiful poster out. Have you seen the poster? Having to do with, it's a poster of the little gravestone.
Oh, yeah. It's a postcard, too.
It's a postcard also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great grave. You know, if anybody ever gets a chance to get to Paris, get over to the Père Lachaise Cemetery and say hello to Jim for us, will you? You know, July 3rd, 1981 is 10 years since Jim Morrison either died or disappeared. And if his body's not around, his spirit is still around, man. His words will live on, and what Jim Morrison was, what Jim Morrison represented, will always be around here on this planet. The man will never die.
Michael of Dallas, listening to the Zoo. Did you get that?
Yeah.
What you got for us, Michael?
Hello?
Hello,
Go ahead, man.
We hear you.
Are you there?
Yeah, we are here. You're here, too.
Hey, okay. I'd like to ask if y'all are trying to achieve the same sort of social statement that you had once achieved in the 60s.
Yeah, right. The 60s, man. The social statement, exactly. The social statement of the 60s was all about changing the world. I don't like the way the world is right now, and I'm sure you don't like the way the world is right now. And I'll tell you, man, we didn't like the way the world was in the 60s either. And we said, we're going to change it. And I think it's up to every person who's listening to this radio station to get behind all the good people, man, and to vote the rascals out. Everybody be political and vote for the people that you want and support the people you want, support the rock and roll bands and the radio stations you want, and man, let's change the world, because I don't like the way it's going now, and I want the world to change, because I don't want no World War III. You understand what I'm talking about? No World War III. I don't want any bombs going off with the Russians and the Americans. I don't want Armageddon taking place in the Middle East. So man, it's up to us. We are in America. We are in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and it's up to us to set the standard for the whole world. So let's do it, man. We can do it. We can change the world to make it a good place to live. All right?
All right. The man says the same thing now as he said 10 years ago. Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Pat of Iowa, you're on with the Beamer and Ray and Robby. Hello.
Yeah, I just want to say that I do realize that Jim Morrison is a total genius. He's one of the greatest men ever alive. And I just want to say, have you going to think about making any new albums in the future?
Yeah, we got some plans, man. We're listening to some material that we recorded at the Isle of Wight in England, a big pop rock festival that went on. Jimi Hendrix played there, and Bob Dylan played there, and the Doors played there, and the Who played there, and a lot of other bands played. And we've got some stuff on tape, and we're going to be listening to it in the next couple of weeks. And there are some plans for a live album with probably including a version of Gloria that we did at the Aquarius Theater here in Los Angeles.
Don't give it all away, Ray.
Really?
Well, I don't want to give it away, but I just want to whet this appetite.
Telling the millions of people, I love it. Great.
Why not? I'm going to tell them that it's the dirtiest version of Gloria that you've ever heard.
In other words, you have enough material in the can now. You've had it all along.
Possibly. We don't know. We're still going through it.
Man. We're going to see what we got and see if it's good enough. We'll put it out. If
we would never
enough,
put anything out that's not great.
Really?
You know.
Well, that's it first on the Rockline. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Eric of Riverside. How you doing?
Oh, okay. How are you, Stevie?
Okay, we're fine.
Okay, Ray and Robby, you're the greatest. You're members of the greatest group ever, as far as I'm concerned. What I wanted to know is what was the true reason and inspiration of the Song of the Door, the end.
Well, you can imagine, man, what must have been going on in Jim's mind when he did the end. The first time he did the whole Oedipus section, mother, father, I want to, you know what, to right. Both of you, that took place at the Whiskey A Go-Go live on stage, and we had never heard it before. And John and Robby and I were up there just, you know, kind of comping and keeping the music going behind Jim, and he came up with these words, man. And I'll tell you, he just stopped the place. He stopped everybody in their tracks. And Frank Zappa might even be able to tell you a little bit about Carl and Vito and some of the freaks that used to dance, man. They were out there, and they stopped dancing, and everybody stopped. Everything stopped when Jim went into that section. He was talking about what was going on inside of him, man. What it was like to deal with mom and dad, you know. And I don't think I can get too much heavier and get into too much more depth here on national radio, but it was some heavy stuff.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Leslie of Omaha, hi.
Hi. I'd like to ask Ray what he thought, what his first impression of Jim was as like a person, not musically, but I mean what he thought of his personality.
A great guy. A really great guy, one of the best looking, you know, and I'm saying this from a male point of view, really, too. I mean, one of the best looking guys I'd seen. He had great hair, he had a great face, you know, and he was just a lot of fun to be with. He was constantly doing funny things to break everybody up, and then all of a sudden he'd get very heavy and very serious, and you knew that you were dealing with a very heavy human being.
Hey, that heavy human being and you heavy people, I'd like to take time out right now. Thank you, Leslie. I want to play another cut so we can hear that heavy person, okay?
Right.
Here's Love Her Madly. All right, don't you love her madly? Of course we do. We're still talking with the Doors, and I want to remind you that we've got some really crazy calls coming by because Robby's sticking around, and Ray is sticking around, and in the wings, in the so-called green room, is Frank Zappa. He'll be around. If you didn't get the numbers before, they're toll-free 800-421-3222, and you can call us collect here in California or in Canada, as a matter of fact. Call us at area code 213-520-5000. We'll be back to talk about Ray Manzarek's crazy haircut. It's very punkish. He's now producing groups. So is Robby, I believe. He's getting to the studios. And that'll be back in a little bit, right after these messages. Well, we're back on the Rockline.
Yes, we are.
I'm Reed, and we got a guy from Robby Krieger's here, and so is Ray Manzarek. And Frank Zappa's coming by. Manzarek or Manzarek?
No, well, I pronounce it Manzarek. A lot that other people pronounce it Manzarek. But,
whatever, you answer.
Don't call me late for supper.
Don't call you late for supper. I guess it's KUPD, Phoenix, that we got Steve from Arizona. Is that right?
That's right.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, how you doing? Robby
All right, man.
Krieger?
Yo.
Yeah, I'd like to say that your guitar playing is the most unique sound that I've ever heard.
Yay.
And Ray, I'd like to say that you're my favorite organist.
Thank you, man.
Your sound is so unique. You know, you'll always be one of my favorites to listen to, really.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Listen, the question I got is, I bought this album about, let's say, 4 years ago, and it's called 20 Top Star Festival Dynamic Hits, and it's put out by K-Tel.
I hope we're not on it.
And this album, it's called In the Eye of the Sun. Ray Manzarek, you had written this song.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to know, as I listen to it all the time, I've never heard this on any of your albums. And the question I got is, who sings this song?
Who sings it, and what album is this song from? If you can name it, you win a complete collection of the Doors catalog. That is off of Other Voices. That was an album made after Jim Morrison decided to leave us. John Ray and Robbie did Other Voices, man.
Or was that the other one?
Or
Full Circle.
Full Circle.
I think it was Full Circle.
Okay, Robbie corrected him. Thank you, Steve. over there in Jacksonville is Rock 105, and on the line, the Rock line is Mary. Hi.
How y'all doing?
We are doing fine. How you?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good. Jacksonville's good town.
That's right. Thank you. I would like to know, had Jim Morrison not died, and y'all would continue playing as a band, would your music today on an album continue to have been the same as before, or would it have changed?
I think it would have, well, the direction Jim and we were going at the time when he died was blues, a lot more blues. Jim was real into the blues. In fact, he wanted to sing blues all day long almost. So I think we probably would have done a couple albums full of really bluesy material.
Funky blues, get down and make love to your baby kind of music. You know what we mean, Mary?
Okay, Mary, thank you. We got our brand new Milwaukee station, WQFM, and I think somebody's calling from there. Is that Tim?
Yeah.
Hi, Tim.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Ray or Robbie.
Go ahead.
When you knew Jim's career was coming to an end, did you start drifting apart, or did you all stay pretty close together?
Well, I think we were always pretty close together. It's I don't think anybody knew that Jim's career was coming to an end, man. Jim's career hasn't, as far as I'm concerned, hasn't come to an end yet. Jim's public performing persona, the Jim Morrison superstar, isn't with us anymore, but Jim Morrison, the poet, is still around, man. So I don't know when Jim Morrison's career came to an end. I don't think it's happened yet.
In fact, he wrote some of his best stuff during his last days, and I think he was actually getting better as a poet and more prolific. So I don't think it was, we had no idea that his career was going to be over.
Well, we'll be looking forward to the new material that you just discovered from the Isle of Wight, and also making everybody aware of that old album of his. What was that? An
American Prayer,
American
man.
Prayer.
Check out An American Prayer. That's got Jim's poetry in it. And if you haven't read the book, No One Here Gets Out Alive. Read that book, man.
And also, the next time you are over if you're here in town, or maybe I don't know where they're touring, but you got to check out Ray Manzarek's New Haircut, because he's producing a group called X, and in the true keeping of what's happening today, he's got his haircut very punkish, if that's what you call a haircut.
Well, it's short. Short anyway. It's a punk haircut. If a short haircut is a punk haircut, yeah, I got a short haircut.
Robbie's hair is receding like mine is and turning color. But tell us about producing for a second before we take another call.
Well, producing's a lot of fun. The LA bands are really hot. Robbie's doing a band called the Willies, and I just did a band called X. And if you haven't heard X, all I can say, man, is pick up the new X album, Wild Gift. It's the hottest thing going on in Los Angeles right now. Outside of what Robbie's working on with the Willies, he's got himself a good band too. So we're trying to support the new Los Angeles scene, man. It was like it was in 1966, 67. You know, it's happening all over again.
I'm listening to you as you talk, but I'm looking for something here. I may have. Wait a minute, I found it. Do you realize that it is maybe Monday here, but it's already Tuesday, and it's Tuesday in New Zealand?
Well, good.
And we have a station called Radio Haureki. It's 5 hours, actually 5 hours earlier than here, but it's Tuesday. I can't figure it out, but there it is. And we have Radio Haureki, and they wanted us to ask a question over there in Auckland from John Adams, and he says, I believe a movie is about to be made about Jim Morrison. Will the remaining Doors members have any artistic control over it? Now, tell us about that. Tell us about John Travolta.
And John Travolta, right. As far as the Doors are concerned, John Travolta, a nice guy, will not be playing Jim Morrison.
Okay, got that wired.
Now we are planning on working on a film about the Doors or Jim Morrison or both, and we're going to be using our a lot of old documentary footage that we'd taken over the years in concert, and putting that together with some new stuff, and
sort of like a documentary type thing.
Sort of documentary, but not totally documentary. You could call it a surrealistic documentary.
Yeah, surrealistic documentary. And until that one comes out, there's a TV show that we're going to be doing, and hopefully will be broadcasted on July 3rd, 1981, and on into the next 6 months of the year. And it's a tribute to Jim Morrison, our TV show that we did. And hopefully you'll see it down in New Zealand, Australia, and all the rest of the world.
Okay, thank you. Let's take another call. I think we have time for Jim of Dallas. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Go ahead, Jim.
I want to ask them what they think of producing as opposed to playing, like when they produce, like when Ray produces X and stuff like that.
Do you hear that, Jim?
Yeah, right. Producing X. I didn't exactly hear the question, man, but I'll tell you what it's like producing. Producing is you're sitting inside the control room and you say more organ, more keyboards, more drums, more guitar, or hold the guitar back. No, give me more vocals. Producing is like directing a movie. You know, it's like overriding the whole thing. You try to get the best possible sound that you can get. Then you try to get the best possible performance out of the musician. And then you put the vocals on, and then you have to work in a very intimate situation with the vocalist, and you try to get the most out of the vocalist that you can. And as far as I'm concerned, X has given me everything that I could possibly ask for, man. Great band. John and Exene and Billy and Don, man. If you're out there listening, you're out of sight.
Thank you. I didn't mean to, sort of cut you short, Jim or Ray, but we're running out of time. I want to remind everybody that the Doors are going to be back for a full show on the Rockline this coming summer, I think right after the TV affair. And we're coming up with Frank Zappa, and I want to thank Ray Manzarek. I want to thank Robby Krieger. It's been a beautiful time with you guys.
Thank you, Mitch.
The legend lives on, and everything is great. Zappa next on Rockline with the Beamer.
Yeah.